Dr. C. Ray Franklin, noted ophthalmologist, was a 1924 graduate of Western and spent much of his career in practice in New York City. He treated United States presidents, provided medical services to thousands of Americans, and acquired one of the finest collections of antiques in this country. But Dr. Franklin always said his chief love was Western Kentucky University. He took his greatest pride in providing scholarships to deserving students, and he and Mrs. Franklin made a major gift of antique furniture to Western Kentucky Museum. A sixth-generation direct descendant of Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Franklin walked with presidents, but never forgot his ties to Western. This morning, Mrs. Franklin presented the Kentucky Museum with a plaster bust of Benjamin Franklin by Jean-Antoine Houdon. He is considered widely as the foremost French sculptor of the 18th century. This work will be on display at the museum. Mrs. Franklin, would you please stand at this time to be recognized? Dr. Franklin passed away in 1985, and we appreciate the legacy that Mrs. Franklin continues to carry forward.
Combining a successful professional career with a love and expertise for antiques, Dr. C. Ray Franklin left his mark for years to come. The 1924 Western graduate was a leading New York City ophthalmologist for 30 years who treated 3 U.S. presidents. But it was his collection and experience with antiques which brought Franklin back to Western to lecture in 1976. Franklin's generosity to Western was obvious through some special gifts. He and his wife, Ruth Holman Franklin, established a perpetual scholarship through Western's College Heights Foundation and donated a number of pieces to the Kentucky Museum. Included among those donations is a bust of his ancestor, U.S. senior statesman Benjamin Franklin. The colorful Franklin's fondness for Western is what Dr. Darrow Downing, president of Western from 1969 to 79, recalls about the Grayson County native.
So he expressed his appreciation often to those and other individuals with whom he studied as a student at Western, and expressed his appreciation for the excellent education which he got on the Hill. He would refer to the fact that he had attended the University of Louisville Medical School, the University of Harvard, the University of Columbia University in New York, had served on the faculty at Columbia University, but he felt that at no place had he been grounded in the educational principles that had benefited him throughout a lifetime that he had had on the Western campus. And as a result, he said always with a smile, he said, "I never would have been worth a row of pens if it had not been for the great people who taught me at Western."
Like others before him, Franklin is reminiscent of those who hold Western dear to their hearts. 1995 Western Hall of Distinguished Alumni inductee, Dr. C. Ray Franklin.
It's a great privilege today to receive this honor for Dr. Franklin on his behalf, on behalf of Mrs. Ruth Franklin. Physically, Dr. Franklin was a very small man, but in intellect, mentality, and emotion, he was a giant. I don't think I've ever met anyone who knew as much about as many things as he did. He was at home with the young as well as the old. At one moment, he might take a guitar and sing a ditty with a child, or joke with them. But the next, he might discuss politics, or medicine, or history, or antiques with the very most educated. I really feel that I've never met a person who knew as much about as many subjects as Dr. Franklin. His life would take him many places, to many schools, as Dr. Downing mentioned in the film, to Harvard, to Columbia, to the University of Louisville, but there was never a place for him like Western Kentucky University. He rubbed shoulders with presidents, kings, movie stars, and people of fame and fortune. He served as ophthalmologist to the rich and to the famous, as well as to those in need in New York City. He too, Dr. Klutz, had his career here interrupted by World War I, and he served as a medic during World War I. He served his community in many different ways. He redecorated rooms in the White House for presidents. He served on the Board of Education in New York for many, many years. But one of the things that he loved to tell about was putting on his old clothes, going out in the yard, to work in the yard, and have people mistake him for the gardener. We heard that story a number of times because he took great delight in the fact that even though he had accomplished much, he was just a very ordinary person. I think Dr. Franklin was a prime example of the fact that you can take a man out of Kentucky, but you can't take the Kentucky out of the man. For many years, he was a leader in the Kentucky Club in New York City. He was proud of the fact that he was a Kentuckian. If you knew Dr. Franklin, there were some things very obvious about him. First of all, he was an American patriot. He loved this country. He had a great love and respect for our land, and he wanted this country to be the country that it could be. He was indeed an American patriot. He also was a highly successful professional man, an ophthalmologist in New York for 30 years. His success was seen by the fact that even in advanced years, he was still receiving calls from German medical societies and British medical societies wanting him to come and speak to their various groups. But the third thing about him is that no matter wherever he went or whatever he did, at the very center of his thoughts and admiration was Western Kentucky University. On one occasion I had been there and I went to see some friends. Being a theologian, I told my friend, I think I'll write a book because I think I now know where the Garden of Eden was. It's in Bowling Green, Kentucky, on the top of the hill there. He loved Western Kentucky University, and you could look far and wide, and I don't think you could ever find another person with as much love, as much appreciation for this school that he had. He loved Western with a deep devotion, seen in the fact that he gave the scholarship money for needy students, the furniture that he gave to the museum, but more than that, if you were around him, you knew that this was a very, very key place in his life. I thank you today for showing this honor for him. I think it would make him feel great to know your appreciation for him. He was many things: a doctor, a scholar, patriot, but a husband. But deep, deep down in his heart, he was a great lover and supporter of Western Kentucky University. Thank you for including him in this hall of alumni today of appreciation, because he loved Western, and we appreciate your recognition of him this day. Thank you.